we are here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. We should be on the visuals of the MK making their grand entrance. Earlier the EFF made a grand entrance and now it's their turn. They usually sing and dance as they come in, and so with that tradition they're continuing with that. So we continue our conversation now with Dr. Patience Nombeko-Mbava. She's the chairperson of the Financial and Fiscal Commission that gives independent advice to government in terms of making sure that their budgets are in line with the Constitution, which is what she told us earlier. So, ma'am, thank you very much for continuing to speak to us. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what was your say, if any, around the VAT increase? Is this something that you had advised or not advised?
So we advised after it was tabled, right? And we felt that there could have been other ways to raise the revenue. Which also brings us as well to the importance of consulting the FFC prior to presenting the fiscal framework. So what we have found is that there are gaps in the legislation in the sense that the FFC does not have that opportunity legally through legislation to actually provide input on the fiscal framework. We do provide input on the division of revenue bill, but that is only at a subnational level. It's looking at municipalities, local government, and then the overall amount which is given to national government. But on the fiscal strategy, on the fiscal path, the way we're going to fund, the debt, or we're going to fund projects and government spending, we don't really have a say in that prior to the minister tabling. So that conversation, we're not part of it. We are part of it subsequently after he has tabled. So we believe that because the Constitution mandates us to actually have a say, it mandates the FFC to advise on the national debt, the national interest, and the fiscal sustainability of the country. So it means that the legislation needs to be reviewed to ensure that we do that.
So in light of what has happened and the fact that there has been a need for greater consultation so that we don't find ourselves in this situation ever again, are you hopeful that that will happen? Not only the consultation at a political level, but also independent institutions like yourself, which have critical mass in terms of the information that you have to be able to ensure that we have well-informed budgets that are fair and respect socio-economic rights.
Absolutely. I think we have a minister who is willing to work with us. We've had a good engagement with him, and we saw the gaps together, and we are willing to go together forward collaboratively. But we also did agree that the legislation needs to be reviewed. What is important, though, is to respect the role of independent constitutional institutions such as the FFC, because there was an intention in the Constitution to have a body which is non-partisan.
Ms. Mbava, I'm sorry, but you are being drowned out. Let's just hand it over to my colleague Bulelani Philip, who can speak to what's happening right now with the entrance of the MK party.
Thank you so much. We are seeing the EFF members coming into Parliament. I'm going to try and see if we can get a word from the EFF and the MK party. But it seems like they are marching full speed going inside. Mr. Montana? Sorry, Mr. Montana. Firstly, as the MK party, what are you guys expecting?
What?
As the MK party, what are you expecting from the party?
No, we don't expect much. We don't think that the framework, the fiscal framework is the right one. So we need major changes. So we don't expect much.
And your advice to the president when he meets President Donald Trump?
Well, nothing. I mean, what do you expect? We think the president should be here with us, not in the US. The president, deputy president should have been here with us.
All right, thank you so much. Lucky Montana. He is the MK Party Member of Parliament. I'm going to try and get my other guest that I had in waiting, the Patriotic Alliance Member of Parliament, Jasmine Peterson. Sorry so much for making you wait. We just had to attend to this caucus of the MK Party. Firstly, as the Patriotic Alliance, what's your expectation for this budget?
Thank you so much. Firstly, I just want to say, I think we are happy to know that the 0.5 has been scrapped, because this doesn't only give us hope, but this helps avoid the additional cost to stakeholders and taxpayers and however, our expectation would still remain, as previously said, our expectation would still remain to see a relocation in job creation, or a zoomed-in focus for job creation, digital skills, entrepreneurship initiatives, because I believe that every young person should have an opportunity, or rather should be given an opportunity to make the best of life, right? If this is if the youth is the future, let the future that we believe in be the future that we invest in.
Do you expect any announcements with regards to austerity measures?
Sorry?
Do you expect any announcements with regards to austerity measures?
Of course.
Austerity measures.
I don't know. I don't know if I actually expect any announcement. Maybe we do.
All right, thank you so much, Jasmine Peterson, Patriotic Alliance Member of Parliament. And for more reaction, I believe my colleague Nompu is standing by.
Thanks very much for joining us back at the ICC. I continue to be in conversation with Ms. Mbaba. And of course, this happens just ahead of the Finance Minister tabling the budget 2025. There is only one budget, and of course, the expectation is that it will be approved following some extensive consultations that have taken place, particularly among the GNU parties. You'll remember that it was the DA which was largely protesting against particularly the decision to push forward a VAT increase, which has subsequently been retracted, and now we are back to the drawing board. We will hear very shortly from the Finance Minister what that looks like. So I'm in conversation with Ms. Mbaba from the FFC. Thank you so much for continuing to chat to us, ma'am. So of course we are going to hear from the Finance Minister very shortly. You've talked about the retraction of the VAT, that you only were able to give advice thereafter. Just talk to us about fundamentally how government can go about raising taxes and the key issue of economic growth, because what economists always say is that the elephant in the room is the lack of economic growth. So do we need to be hearing more about structural reforms rather than anything else?
I think it's important to understand that for us to get economic growth, we need to grow beyond the 1.4% annual growth rate, because it's not sustainable. And for us to raise taxes, we need to increase the tax base. And also maybe we need to review the company tax rate as well. I've heard also about the wealth tax, but we don't know what that means really. It needs to be understood what it means. But I think for me, what is important for today, and the fact that the minister is going forward to present the budget, yes, we've had consultation. What is important now is consensus. That consensus now is going to be within the parliamentary process. So the Finance Committee, that is the battleground, where now all the committees, members of the committees are going to now look at the nuts and bolts of what he has presented. And then they must agree on the fiscal framework and then table that to Parliament. That is the crust of it. The tabling now is fine, it's normal, it's a procedural. But what you really look forward to is the fact that is there going to be consensus now amongst the parties. There has been consultation with the relevant parties, obviously the cabinet, but the parties inside Parliament must have consensus. And also the public at large must also be amenable to what is being proposed. That is the crux.
Of course, that is the crux, and it makes absolute sense. But surely, as a country, we really can't afford to go through another iteration And given that the GNU in principle seems to have agreed this, Deputy Finance Minister David Masondo seemed to suggest that when he spoke at an RMB investor conference last week. Surely this should be a fait accompli. And if it is a fait accompli, that is, it's a done deal, what do the timelines need to look like in order for everything to normalize for provinces and municipalities so that we continue, in terms of our operations as a country and our, investment in growth for the economy?
So right now, if we talk about the provinces in terms of their spending, they have provisional allocation based on the budget for last year, but that obviously has a spending ceiling. They can only spend so much. So it's very, very critical that this budget is successful, it goes through, otherwise the whole country will be in limbo. So we really want Budget 3.0 to really go through the parliamentary process smoothly, and then the work of government can continue.
Just in terms of infrastructure, we know that in the Budget 2.0 iteration, the government was looking at spending over R1 trillion over the next 3 years. Presumably they're going to keep that in place because ultimately what we really need is investment in infrastructure, electricity, water, sanitation, the whole gambit. Because obviously if we don't make that investment, it means our tomorrow is going to be even worse than it is today.
Absolutely, but what we have to recognize is that we have to prioritize. We cannot spend on everything. So we'll have to look at key infrastructure projects, prioritize those and continue with them. So issues like logistics, PRASA, Transnet, and then also stabilizing ESCOM is very important. So I think the logistics sector for me is important. We need the road transport, which works. Otherwise, the economy will not be able to grow.
What must happen around the logistics sector, namely Transnet? I mean, we saw a report the other day suggesting, from a ratings agency, suggesting that they might not have enough capital to continue running because they have debts that are maturing that they must pay off, and they need to operate, and they have a massive sort of capital expenditure that they must execute on in order to get those investments on the go. Yes, we're looking at private sector jumping in as well, but to some extent, government needs to play a role in order to incentivize the private sector to also jump in and make the investment.
So I think what is important for us as FFC is that we need to have a clear and coherent public-private partnership framework. Right now, it's not clear who pays for what. So remember, when the private sector comes in, there's an issue of risk and reward. So we want them to come in and assist us as government, but there must be something in it for them. So now those permutations are not clear who pays for what, who does what. But for the here and now, what we are saying is that for Transnet to move forward, we might have to look at public-private partnerships, but there must be a clear framework as who does what. Because government, end of the day, can't do everything. We have to collaborate and work together.
Ms. Mbava, what about the issue of municipalities? There seems to be a lack of capacity. It's been an ongoing theme that the Auditor General has spoken about. Basic things like being able to submit financials. Municipalities have not been able to do that. Employing the wrong kind of people for very important jobs that need to be executed. What are your hopes and fears around the municipalities, which at the end of the day are the coalface of delivery for communities?
I think what is important for us to note is that, the whole premise of municipalities and how they make revenue is based on the white paper on local government. And that white paper, currently, we are reviewing it because the assumptions which were made in the earlier years have that the municipalities will be able to fund themselves, to find their own source of revenue. But because our people, in most instances, they don't have income, so the environments or the communities are poorer, and they aren't able to pay for those basic services. So now we have to go to say, do we need to give municipalities more than the current allocation that you are giving to local government for them to be able to be sustainable? And if we do that as well, do we have the right people in the right seats to actually have the right financial stewardship over public resources? Because that is a problem as well. We give them more money, but we don't know where that money is going. So we have to balance that. Yes, we hope we can give them more money after maybe the white paper on local government make those recommendations. We look at that. But once we've done that, we need to make sure we have the right people in the right seats with the right skills and the right capacity to execute.
It's very interesting you say that, because then it's now the issue of which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because the municipal end of the government is really the most important in terms of delivery to communities, but we still are sat with the problem that they're not delivering with the little that they have. What about the issue of, quite apart from the transfers they get from national government, what about the issue of rates and taxes? Okay, I continue. I've got my director in my ear. But what I wanted to ask you is, what about the raising of money independently in terms of rates and taxes? Because you have the problem that there are many communities that can't even afford to pay for the basics.
That's perfectly fine, but you must understand that there are disparities in our municipalities. Some of them are rural.
All right, ma'am, I'm going to interrupt you there. It does seem as though there's some activity happening in the plenary hall.